show, is like you see the players arrive and they do that kind of familiar walk, and it's normal, but at the same time you're like, this is not quite the same, because they arrive from a slightly different entrance, and they're using the NFL change rooms to the home change room. So there's all these little idiosyncrasies that make match day normal, that are just a tiny bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the key things that people noticed, which was Spurs came out the East Tunnel, which is most people never know isn't not normally there, because it's normally got seats over it, and the away team came out the normal tunnel, so they still got the terrible, the bad changing room, the away changing room. But it's one of those things, like these little tweaks that we can do that others can't, because we've got the space to do it, the facilities to do it.
So lucky. I mean, the transformation that they put into place. There was a video that we ran on the show of it being transformed. It's just amazing, and we've got that facility, which is kind of cool.
But when you were there, standing on the southwest corner balcony, and you're doing it, and you're inside an empty stadium but about to watch a football match, that must have felt different. I mean, we've been in and out empty stadiums before, and we've been inside busy stadiums, but never been inside an empty stadium about to watch, an actual regulated match. So that must have felt quite different.
Yeah, I'm trying to think when the last time I would have done that is, like, to the point where there was in a stadium, in a world-class arena, there being that few people.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't think I've ever attended a behind closed doors game before in my life. So it was a completely new experience.
Yeah.
And it was the thing that I picked out the most, and the thing that I found most fascinating, is that you can hear everything. Everything, every last instruction and every bit of interaction between the players, and that was fascinating. For example, someone like Hugo, who you on a normal match day, you can't hear a word that they're saying to each other. He's so vocal, he communicates so well, and it really sort of, I was like, wow, that's so impressive. He spent the entire game, he spoke throughout the entire game. Not more than 10-15 seconds went by when he wasn't talking to the defence. He was marshalling the whole lot, and then obviously being able to hear Jose as well was a treat, really. I was very lucky, and I think that's important to recognise, is that it's a very special thing right now, while we were all missing football so much, and then to be one of few that's actually allowed to go and see it firsthand. I feel very privileged.
Just so that I guess people know. So at home, obviously watching on Sky, you can change the audio, and we can have the FIFA noises and all this kind of thing. Sure. There's some guy there sort of hitting an iPad, cheering and booing or whatever.
A soundboard, yeah.
Not always in time with the play, I have to point out, but there's somebody doing it at the Premier League. But in the stadium, there's no crowd noise. There's no piped in noise. There's no nothing, right? So
for all of the, I think for all of the Premier League stadiums, they haven't had any crowd noise played in so far, as to the best of my knowledge. So you can really, it's not pin drop. It's just very much sort of your kind of standard football fare in terms of like the type of noise that you hear.
Because you do hear because the way the levels are, you can hear the players talking to each other at home. Those mics are picking it up and it is being transmitted. So you hear it more than you would do normally when there's a crowd there, but obviously not as much as you were hearing it being there. Yeah,
and also there's little things as well that for example, like the thump of a tackle, when people go in for a big challenge, like you actually hear the impact of challenges, which is quite like sort of, and also when people put their foot through the ball, for example, it's quite...
The bang.
You suddenly get a lot more. You get a lot more in terms of the acoustics of what an average game would usually have, that you're not really cognitively aware of, because the atmosphere in the stadium is usually kind of simmering and playing out over the top of that. And I suppose that's one thing that's a little bit different, is that I think the thing that I missed the most, or the time that I noticed it the most, is if someone loses the ball and then they run back and make a recovery challenge. It's almost like there's a warm kind of applause or appreciation for a good challenge. Or when someone switches the play nicely, you just get that nice ripple of applause, and you're like, and you sort of start doing it. Yeah, you start doing it, and you're like, yeah, and then you sort of look around, no one else is doing it, and so you sort of like, this is really weird.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you're not getting any or any dirty looks or any of the technical stuff. But do you think that has then an effect on the players and on the match. So with the crowd behind them, you'd assume that they get something from that, and then there's intensity. But without the crowd, do you think that has an impact on the mentality or the way of playing?
That's a good question. I think Jose said after the game that when he got, I think it was on Sky Sports, he said this, but he said that when he got into the game, he sort of went into tunnel vision on the game. And I genuinely do believe that that's the case. One thing I suppose that we'll see is that you won't get surges of momentum. Like teams, for example, like if you look at the likes of Sheffield United, that there was times when you genuinely felt that their home stadium was an absolute fortress and that they would literally be able to, if the crowd suddenly got up for it, they could just turn.
Yeah.
And they were suddenly at it. And I can remember a game that Sheffield United had against Man United, it's probably back in October or November time, maybe, the 3-3 draw. And like the team were absolutely carried by the home support in that. So I think it's probably something that we'll see less of. But at the same time, I don't know whether you've seen this, so many people talking about the idea of the technically better sides being better off because there's less deviances in terms of the kind of match day swing.
Yeah, because you haven't got the sort of the 12th man type thing behind them. So therefore it's more raw and it's just about them and their technical ability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. I think potentially from my point of view, I think because it's the first round of matches, I think they're also trying to get used to something that's quite different. Footballers are creatures of habit and they're used to things being a certain way, and now things have changed. Certainly. So they've got to get used to that again. So I think it's possibly a case of educating themselves, but just becoming used to what is a different normal.
Certainly, yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps. So just looking ahead then to the next game, West Ham United, more N17 live?
Yeah, we're live now before kickoff across YouTube and Facebook, Spurs TV, Twitter as well. And so, we'd love to have people along, and please do get involved and comment and chat. I think that's the best thing about doing live shows is you get the immediacy of people being able to get in touch and people being able to chat, particularly with social media.
Yeah.
So we're back again ahead of the West Ham game, and fingers crossed we put in an absolute shift and go out and thump them.
Absolutely. Our first London derby under the new regime. So listen, Ben, thank you so much for joining me and taking some time out. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, mate.
And for everyone who's listening, log on to YouTube tomorrow night, an hour before the game. Look up the Tottenham Hotspur page. And if you watch the show some love. Tell the club how amazing Ben is and how brilliant the show is. And hopefully we'll pick this up again in a couple of weeks, Ben, and you can tell us more about what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see you all tomorrow night.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, so just to pick up on what we were briefly mentioned before, Pride Month. So the reason I think it's interesting for us, because obviously, like football, Pride is a big event where hundreds of thousands of people come together, in London, and Proud Lilywhites gets a good contingent there, and we've been well supported by the club, and we represent the club at Pride in London, and so everybody who's there and all of the other teams that the Spurs has a great LGBTQ supporter group, and we're well represented.
Yeah.
But of course, this year it's not possible because of COVID. So what we're trying to do is something a bit more virtual and online for our members, because many of our members either live with their families or they live alone. It's a very different scenario for some LGBT people. So what we want them to do is on Saturday afternoon, we'll do a Zoom call where everybody will come together and just hang out online, chat, drink, what you're up to, and just have a bit of a mini Pride online, so that people can still feel connected even though we are not physically together. And
so how many are you going to have on the Zoom call? That could be quite a lot, shouldn't it?
It could be quite a lot. I mean, as it happens, through the whole coronavirus lockdown, we've done a few different events. We've been talking Tottenham on a Wednesday night. That's just an open Zoom call for whoever wants to drop in.
Yeah.
And we've done a few little things on that, like our ultimate Spurs 11, our goal of the season so far, player of the season so far. We've just done some fun things.
Yeah.
And one Wednesday we did a pub quiz.
Yeah, I was on that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So and there was as both of you were. So
yeah.
We had over 40 people on that call. So and that was fantastic. So
that was great. Yeah.
We've kept that going, and we expect to get a dozen, maybe a couple of dozen people. It's nothing big. It's not a big deal. It's just people getting together. But what we have done this year also is, because we know that allyship is really important to our members, we've reached out across our networks, and we've put together a video package of lots of allies, including some familiar faces who are just showing their kind of support for Proud Lilywhites and Pride, etc. So we'll be putting that out on socials over the weekend. We'll be, as I said, doing what we said, a virtual thing. But it should just be fun, and it's something for people to kind of get engaged with on Saturday afternoon, because we won't be together in Central London.
Yeah, sure. Steve,
just a quick question, really, on Pride, and through lockdown, right? We've had this celebration of the NHS, and it's been great, and carers. Sorry, not just the NHS, but carers and key workers, and they've to symbolise this support of carers and key workers and the NHS and everything, they've decided to adopt the rainbow.
Yes.
So, how, as a member of the LGBT community, how does that come across to you? How does that feel for you, and other people that you may talk about it?
So, I think it's quite interesting, because, of course, the reason it came about, as far as I can tell, is that NHS workers had a rainbow flag badge with the word letters NHS on it that they would wear either as a lanyard or as a badge. And the reason that they had those badges is so that patients who were seeing these healthcare workers could feel comfortable they had allies that they could talk about either sexual health or their own sexuality with a medical worker, and not feel embarrassed or intimidated. So you can well imagine that if for some reason you're in a medical setting and someone's making assumptions about your sexuality, talking about your, my wife or my girlfriend, I might feel that I don't want to talk about my sexuality with them, but that might be quite key to the medical attention that I'm given. So as part of their Pride movement, the NHS had a rainbow lanyards and rainbow badges. Now, what I think has happened is that people have obviously Googled, NHS logos or something, and they've seen this, and it's then become somewhat adopted. But it's very clear, which is that the Pride flag has 6 stripes and a rainbow has 7. And a rainbow in an arc is very different to a Pride flag. I know they look the same, but they're two different things. So you do have to say, of course, a rainbow is an act of nature, and therefore there is no copyright on an act of nature. And it's, the reason that it's been adopted by the NHS for this is lovely, because it's bringing everyone together, and that's been a global thing. It's not something from the UK. But where we see a Pride flag being used because it's lazy Google's image looking up, you have to say, well, you do know what that is, right? Because it's not what you think it is. So I think there's just been some conflation of the two. They are, it's two different things, but I'm not sure many people have picked up on that.
And I think it's also brightened up a few dingy windows in some streets, hasn't it, by the kids doing some drawing. So it's all been good for them.
It has, but I'm not sure if I walk past my estate agents who've got a big NHS, Pride flag in their window.
I know the ones you mean, yeah.
And I knocked on their door and said, they would know what it is.
No.
I think there's a bit of care that needs to be kind of thought about there.
Inevitable.
Steve,
Steve.
No, it's just, it's just that, for example, if you had a Pride flag in your window prior to lockdown, then there's a good chance, depending on where you live and depending on the ignorance of the people that may be around you, that could be, something to attract attention, to give you abuse. Whereas now, that flag has been like, well, it's a great flag. So it's nice that that it's all of a sudden it's not seen as a problem. But what happens in 6 months' time, when we're no longer celebrating the NHS with the use of, this flag, does it then become